How to use Audacity Effects. There is another major purpose of using Audacity besides recording and editing audio. This purpose is to use audio effects to make it better or different. You can see all the available effects from the Effect menu. There are two kinds of audio effects, one fixes some issues, and the other makes the audio different. For example, the noise reduction effect removes some noise from the recording. So it is an example of an effect that fixes something. On the other hand, the echo effect makes the sound echoey. So it is an example of an effect that makes the audio different. Audacity has some effects on its own, called built-in effects. You can also use third-party effects with Audacity. All the effects under this line are third-party effects. They are grouped by vendor names. I have installed plugins from MuseFX and iZotope, so I see those names. For you, this vendor name will not be the same. The built-in effects are grouped by what kind of task it does. I will discuss later this Add Real-Time Effects and Plugin Manager. You can change the way effects are grouped from Audacity preference. It is actually a matter of choice and convenience. You can configure different settings for Audacity from preference. On the effects, you will see a sort or group dropdown. You can change from the default to other options, for example, sorted by effect name. Click OK, and you will see the effects are arranged differently. You can now see effects are arranged by name. It makes the effect menu quite big, but the effects are easier to find. It is up to you how you want your effects to be displayed. I will change it back to the default group option. There are many built-in effects, and discussing all those effects will take a very long time. Instead, I will discuss some most used effects. These 4 effects are the primary effects to make any voice sound better. The order of these effects is also very important to get the optimal result. However, I will not maintain this order to show how the effect works. My goal is to help you understand how an effect works and how to configure an effect. So I will discuss it in an order that is easier for you to understand. But when you use the effects to improve your sound, maintain this order. I will duplicate this track to compare it with the effect applied track. I will rename this bottom track to original and apply the effects on the top track. Double-click inside the top track to select everything inside it. The first effect I will apply is the Normalize effect. You will get it in volume and compression. You can think of normalizing as a mechanism for volume control. The loudest part of the audio will get the value you set here. So if you set the peak amplitude as -3, the maximum peak in this meter will be -3. Let's assume, before normalizing, the loudest part of the audio is hitting -15 in this meter. After normalizing with a peak amplitude of -3, the -15 will become -3, a total increase of 12 dB in the volume. Every part of the audio will increase by 12 dB then. It means your noise will also be increased by 12 dB. I am not going into detail to keep this tutorial beginner-friendly. Once you finish this tutorial, you can check other videos on my channel, which discuss various audio topics in detail. You can get back to the default settings from factory presets for any built-in effects. Keep the Remove DC Offset checked, it keeps the waveform centered around this 0.0 value. However, modern recording equipment does not produce such offset very often, but keeping this checked will not do any harm. I am working with a mono track, so there is no point in checking this last checkbox as that is for the stereo channel. You may wonder what the perfect value for this peak amplitude is. It depends on the situation. The maximum value can be 0, which is the maximum in Audacity meters. It will not take any positive value, and controls become inactive when I enter a positive value. I usually use -3 as the peak amplitude. Some platforms do some processing after upload, so -3 keeps a headroom for extra processing. -3 makes the audio comfortably audible.
Audacity is the best free software for audio editing and recording, though there are a couple of other softwares which is free, but
you see, the audio has become louder and is not crossing -3 in the meter. Let me find a sample with a higher peak.
And if you think about some paid software,
it is not getting close to -3. Let me find another sample. It looks like this one has the loudest peak.
But whatever software you use, you have to know the basics of audio recording and editing.
So you see, it is not crossing -3 as I had normalized the peak to -3. Did you notice the hissing noise has become strong after normalization? There are many causes for hissing noise, such as AC, laptop fan, etc. Even the microphone or audio interface can introduce some hissing noise, though we do not hear those during recording. Audacity has an effective noise reduction to minimize this hissing noise. It only works with hissing noise or white background noise. If you have irregular background noise, it is not that useful. To remove hissing noise, you have to select a noise-only part from anywhere in the recording. It can be from the start, middle, or end. The main point is your selected hissing noise is also present in other parts of the audio. So when you reduce that noise, the same noise from other parts also gets reduced. I have already selected a piece from the beginning. Noise reduction is a two-step process. The first part involves introducing that noise to Audacity. With the noise sample selected, go to Noise Reduction. Click on Get Noise Profile, and Audacity will match this noise and remove it in step 2. Select the portion of the audio from where you want to remove that noise. For me, that white noise is present all over the audio, so I will select everything on the track by double-clicking inside it. Go to the Noise Reduction effect again. You have to set values for these sliders. Remember, there is a cost with noise reduction. The more noise you reduce, the harsher the sound becomes. If you want to know the detail about an effect, click on the help icon on the effect settings. You will be taken to a detailed documentation of that effect. You can read about what the settings do and how to configure the settings. This documentation is useful for those who want to go deep into audio editing. The Noise Reduction Manual has recommended settings for voice. It suggests a value of 6 for each of the sliders. Let's get back to Audacity and configure those sliders. Set the amount of noise you want to reduce from the noise reduction slider. It is recommended to use 6, though you may need to go higher, like 9. The default value of this slider is 12, though I feel it introduces a noticeable harshness. I will set it to 12 for demo purposes. Sensitivity decides how aggressively the noise reduction process will be. If it is set to 0, no noise reduction will happen regardless of what value you set in other sliders. The maximum value is 24, but you can hardly go over 6. Because a too aggressive noise reduction will destroy the audio quality, set the sensitivity value to 6. After noise reduction, a gap is introduced in the audio. Frequency smoothing bands reduce that gap. It helps to reduce the harshness introduced due to noise reduction. For music recording, a lower value, like 2 or 1, is recommended. 0 means no smoothing will be applied. For voice recording, a value of 6 works best. If you want to preview how it will sound, Audacity will play a 6-second preview. To apply these settings, click on OK. The line already looks flat. If I play this, the noise is quite reduced. It is hitting somewhere between -36 and -39 in this meter due to a mouth noise here. This tiny dot is the mouth noise. The noise other than the mouth noise is quite small. If I delete the mouth noise, you can see it in the meter. I will undo the delete, and you should focus more on the noise in the spoken parts. Let's check how the spoken words sound now.
Audacity is the best free software for audio editing and recording. Though there are a couple of other softwares which is free, but Audacity is the easiest one to use.
I feel it is a bit harsh after noise reduction. As I said earlier, a value of 12 makes the sound bit harsh. I will undo the noise reduction from history and do a noise reduction with 6. I already gave Audacity a noise sample in this session, so I can skip step 1. Audacity already has the noise profile. I will set noise reduction to 6. Let's hear.
Audacity is the best free software for audio editing and recording. Though there are a couple of
I think the sound is okay, and no obvious noise is there. There is one effect in audio editing that can make or break a recording: equalization. Equalization, or EQ in short, is the process of editing volume by frequencies. You will get EQ from EQ and filters. The filter curve EQ is the most sophisticated of all these EQ effects, and I will use it. You can draw curves of frequency manipulation to EQ your audio. I will reset it to default settings. The green line where we draw the curve is now flattened. You can also flatten the curve from the Flatten button. The green line is aligned with 0 dB. In this horizontal axis, you can see the frequencies. Frequency started at 20 Hz and ended at 20 kHz. Every sound we hear has a frequency. A human can only listen to sounds in the frequency range of 20 Hz to 20 kHz. In the vertical axis, you see the dB numbers. You can either increase or decrease the volume of a frequency by dragging the green line to a certain dB. The topic of how sound is distributed over frequencies is quite a large topic. For the sake of EQ, it is good to know that when we hear a sound, it is a combination of many frequencies. In other words, we hear multiple frequencies simultaneously for a particular sound. So different words or different sounds will have a different combination of frequencies. When we increase the volume of some frequencies, we call it a boost. When we decrease the volume of some frequencies, we call it a cut. So how do we know which frequencies to cut or boost? For voiceover, we have certain guidelines. But the actual process of EQ also depends on experience. I will discuss some common guidelines, and you will understand them after trying them a couple of times. Audacity has some factory presets, and you can go over them to get an idea of what they are doing. For some voices, a treble boost can make the sound crispier. It depends on the voice type that I will get back to shortly. If you analyze the treble boost graph, it starts boosting at 4 kHz and reaches 9 dB at 5 kHz. Then it applies a 9 dB boost on the rest of the frequencies. Boost should be limited to 6 dB because a 9 dB boost may sound unnatural. The small white dots you see are drag points. I can drag the green line from the white points. I will drag the green line from 9 dB to 6 dB. A white dot will appear if I click anywhere at the green line. I can drag it to boost or cut. I am cutting frequencies after 16 kHz. Because for voice, there is nothing after that frequency most of the time. Let's apply this EQ, and let's hear how it sounds.
Audacity is the best free software for audio editing and recording.
It sounds crispier. I will undo the EQ effect from history and apply a more advanced EQ. This advanced EQ is recommended for most of the voices. From factory presets, I will use low roll-off for speech. This preset is slowly rolling off frequencies less than 100 Hz. I will roll off from 80 Hz instead of 100. Because our fundamental frequency can start from as low as 80. Anything less than 80 Hz is not our voice. If there is something beyond 80 Hz, that is probably noise. Rolling off from less than 80 Hz can help to reduce that kind of noise. To add crispiness, I will add the treble boost. I cannot use that from the factory preset, as that will overwrite the modification I already did. Instead, I will add those manually. I have added 2 dots on 4 kHz and 5 kHz. I will drag the 5 kHz dot to 6 dB. Like last time, I will add a cut after 16 kHz. It is a generic EQ that works for most of the voice. However, some voices produce sibilance or sharp S. For that kind of voice, treble boost should be avoided or used with a de-esser. I can save this drawing as a preset so that I do not have to redraw it again next time. Click on Save Preset and give it a name. I will name it my Best EQ1. This preset will appear in User Presets. I will apply the EQ.
Audacity is the best free software for audio editing and recording. Though there are a couple of other softwares which is free, but
it sounds way much better than the original recording.
Audacity is the best free software for audio editing and recording. Though there are a couple of other softwares which is free, but Audacity is the easiest one to use. You can practice your audio recording and editing in Audacity, and when you are used to this software, you can move to.
We have to learn about another effect, the compressor. A compressor reduces the gap between louder and quieter sounds. This gap is called dynamic range, and the compressor reduces it. You will hear the term dynamic range in audio editing frequently. Audacity has 2 kinds of compressors, downward compressor and upward compressor. Configuring a downward compressor with Audacity is difficult as we cannot read values directly from the meter. It uses the RMS value, which is a bit difficult to read with Audacity. If you check the compress based on peaks checkbox, an upward compressor will be used. I will use an upward compressor. The makeup gain checkbox does a 0 dB normalization after compressing the sound. It does not matter if you keep this checked or unchecked. Because we normalize after compressing, so this checkbox does not matter. You have to measure a value for the threshold and noise floor from your recording. It will vary from recording to recording, so it is important to understand how to measure it. It is good to apply the compressor before normalizing. I will get back to the point of editing before the normalize effect. Now I have exactly the original recording, just duplicated also in the bottom track. If you remember, I said these effects have to apply in this order to make a voice recording better. So I will apply the first two effects and then show you how to measure the compressor's sound levels. I am fast forwarding noise reduction and EQ, as I have already discussed those in detail. I will now apply the compressor in the proper way. I have to measure a value for the threshold. As I will be using an upward compressor, any value less than the threshold will be increased in volume. I will play some parts of the audio and note where it hits the meter.
Though there are a couple of other softwares which is free, but Audacity is the easiest one to use. You can practice your audio recording and editing in Audacity, and when you are used to this software, you can move to.
It crosses -21 most of the time, and the peak hits -15. The threshold will be a value between these two values. I also have to measure the noise floor value. It is just over -45. So the noise floor value in the compressor configuration has to be greater than this value. I will go to Compressor Effects as I have all the required readings. I will choose -18 as the threshold value. Any recording under -18 will be increased in volume, and the gap with louder sound will be minimized. I kept the noise floor to -35, greater than the noise floor I measured. -35 is also less than any spoken word volume, so it is a safe value. I will choose 4:1 as the ratio. Choose a ratio like 3:1 or 4:1. Too much compression makes the sound unnatural.
Audacity is the best free software for audio editing and recording, though there are a couple of other softwares.
The last effect to make the sound better will be Normalize.
You can practice your audio recording and editing in Audacity, and when you are used to this software, you can move to a more complex software.
So this is how the final edited recording sounds. There is another effect that works as an alternative to Normalize. You will need this effect if your project requires a loudness level on LUFS. You can normalize based on RMS or perceived loudness. Perceived loudness is most used. Some TV channels have a requirement of -23 LUFS.
Audacity is the best free software.
It may sound a bit of a low volume for YouTube videos. For YouTube videos, you can use -18 LUFS. You will notice an increase in the waveform as I apply -18 LUFS. So far, all my shown effects were on the fixing side. Let's see an effect whose purpose is an enhancement, reverb. From factory presets, you can select different kinds of reverb. You can make the recording sound like it was in a large room or church hall. Different room sizes have different types of sound reflections, and the reverb effect adds that reflection. You can play around with other sliders and check how it sounds.
Audacity is the best free software for audio editing and recording. Audacity is the best free software for audio editing and recording, though there are a couple of other softwares which is free.
It sounded pretty funny. The last effect I will show in this tutorial is Truncate Silence. It can be a time-saving effect. I will fit the entire waveform onto the screen. Go to Truncate Silence from the special group. Configure how Audacity will recognize a silence. I configured that if the sound level is less than -28 dB for half a second is silence. The action tells Audacity what to do when such a silent part is found. I set to truncate the silence to 0.3 seconds. So whenever my audio has a 0.5 seconds or more extended silence, the silence will cut to 0.3 seconds. You can see the overall waveform got shorter as the silence parts got truncated. Audacity has many other effects, and I advise you to explore those. If you want to know about any effect in detail, let me know in the comment.